Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about taking the uniform off for the last time. There is a moment that nobody in the military or uniformed services ever really prepares you for. It's not the retirement ceremony. It's not the speech. It's not even the handshake or the final salute. It's later. And not only is it later, it's quiet and it's usually alone. It's the moment you take off the uniform for the last time. You hang it up, or you fold it, or you just set it down. And you set it down somewhere. And you stand there for a second, and something shifts. Something that doesn't have a name yet, something you weren't told was coming, and it just shifts. I'm Quentin Moore, for those of you who don't know me, and for those of you who are returning, we're glad that you came back. I served active duty for 22 years between the United States Air Force and the United States Public Health Service. I retired at the age of 46, and today I want to talk to you about that moment. When you look at my service, I started off active duty Air Force. I did 4 years as a policeman from the age of 19 to 23. And then I got out and I went to the Kentucky Air Guard for 6 years. And after that, I transferred back active duty to the U.S. Public Health Service, where I was, when you combine my active duty service of PHS and the Air Force, is a total of 22 years. And I want to talk to you about that moment, the real one, not the ceremony version, the private moment. Because if you've worn the uniform, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, I think this story still belongs to you. I think you could get something from it as well. Now, most people on the outside think a uniform is just clothes, but it's not. It never was. And in fact, I feel it's probably an identity. It's a set of expectations. It's a signal to the world about who you are. And it's also a signal about where you belong. When you put it on for the first time, you feel something. You know you did if you wore the uniform. The uniform was communicating things you didn't have to. You didn't have to say out loud. Uh, I'm a part of something. I have a mission. There are people counting on me. It said, I earned this. I passed the test. I'm in the club that not everybody gets into. That's what the uniform said. It reminded you of all of that without you having to think about it. Now, when you think about that, that's a powerful thing. And it's a powerful thing to wear every day for 22 years. The rank on the collar, the insignia on the shoulders, the name tape over the pocket. Every piece was telling a story about who you were. And the day you take it off for the last time, all of that, it gets quiet all at once. You know, the ceremony is designed to honor the service, and it does a good job of that. People say the right things during your ceremony and things like that, but there are awards, certificates, handshakes, maybe a folded flag. There's a structure it carries, and it carries you through that structure. You know what's coming next. You know your role, and in a lot of ways, the ceremony is the last day you're still in that system. You're still performing the mission, but just a different version of it. And the real moment comes after the reception, after the well-wishers have gone home, after the weekend settles in. Somewhere in those first few days, you go to put on the uniform and you realize, hmm, that's not where you're going today. Or you open up the closet and it's just hanging there. And you look at it differently. You look at it differently than you have ever looked at it before. And that's the moment that I want to talk about, because that's the one moment that nobody really prepares you for. I remember the last time I wore the USPHS uniform. I'd been in the system long. I've been in the system long enough that putting it on was automatic. Didn't think about it. Didn't have to. Uh, it was just part of my morning ritual, if you will. And it was part of who I was. And then there was a last day. And I knew it was the last day. And I put it on anyway. I put the uniform on anyway. And I put it on the same way I always did, because I didn't know how else to do it. That's what I did. And I got up, I got through that day, uh, did what I needed to do, went through the motions, and when I came home that evening, I'll never forget it. When I came home that evening, I took it off. And I remember hanging it up and just standing there for a moment or two, and not dramatic, not tearful, just still. Like something had gone quiet that used to have a sound. And what I felt, it wasn't grief exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when a song ends and the room hasn't caught up yet. You know, that brief gap between the last note and the applause. That's kind of what it was like. And I was in that gap, because on the other side of that uniform was everything it had given me. The rank, the mission, the structure, the community, the reason to get up and be somewhere and matter to something bigger than myself. And when the uniform came off, all of that, it was still there, but it wasn't automatic anymore. When I look at it, I think I'd have to build it on purpose now. And in that moment, standing in front of the closet, I wasn't sure I knew how. Think of that. You've been doing something for years, and then it stops. And now you're like, okay, how do I do this? And now, if you've ever worn a uniform, be it military, nursing, law enforcement, fire, USPHS, any service, I want to hear from you right now. Tell me in the comments, what did that last day feel like for you? And I genuinely want to know. I genuinely want to know. Because all of us have a feeling. Some it's happiness, some it's sadness. Some of us, we don't know what it is. But I just want to hear what your feeling was and how you dealt with it. Here's what I've come to understand about that moment. The uniform was never just clothing. It was a container for identity. And when the container changes, you've got to figure out what you're carrying without it. The question the uniform used to answer every morning was, who are you? And for me, that answer was an officer, a clinician, a public servant, part of a team, on a mission. And that question, it doesn't go away when the uniform does. It just stops being answered automatically. And if you're not ready for that, it can feel like losing yourself. But you don't really. But it can feel like that. What exactly happens, it's simpler and harder at the same time. So, what do I mean? You didn't lose who you are. You just lost the shortcut that answered the question for you. Now, you've got to answer it yourself. Every day, you got to do it on purpose. And that, to be honest, is both the hardest part of leaving the uniform services and the most important work of the transition. So you need to think about that. The people who struggle most in retirement from service are the ones who let the uniform answer that question for so long that they forget that they could answer it themselves. Not because they're weak, but because the system was so good at providing the answer for you. Uh, and there was never a reason, when you look at it, there was never a reason for you to practice it. And now there is. You really have to think about it. Many of us started wearing that uniform as a young man or young woman who was 18 or 19 years old. That was a time in our lives where we were attempting to figure out who we were from the beginning. And if you're still in service right now and you know the day is coming, hear me on this. Hear me on this. Start building your answer to the identity question before the uniform comes off. Not because the transition it has to be hard, but because it's easier when you're not starting from zero. Okay? Who are you without the rank? That's a question worth sitting with before the last day. And you don't want to do that, not after. You don't want to do it after. If you've already had that moment and you're still finding your footing, you're not behind. In fact, the timeline for this, it's not standardized. Nobody gets through it in the same amount of time. What matters is that you're asking the question and you haven't stopped moving, okay? And if somebody you know or somebody you love is going through this right now and you don't know what to say, you don't have to say much at all. Just don't rush them through the process, okay? That quiet after the last uniform, it's doing something. It's the beginning of a new answer being built. So give it some room. The uniform, for me, the uniform is still in the closet. I haven't gotten rid of it, and I don't know that I will. It represents something real. It represents 22 years of showing up, 22 years of mission, 22 years of being part of something that mattered. But I don't need it to tell me who I am anymore. I know who I am. I'm Dr. Quentin Moore. I'm a husband. I'm a father, I'm a clinician, an educator, a community builder, a man of faith. I'm a father in my community. And I'm the host of this platform that you're watching right now. That's who I am. Not because of the uniform, but because of the work I chose to do after it came off. And that's what I want for you. Not to forget the service, not to minimize what it meant, but to build something on the other side of it, something that's just as real, something just as meaningful. Just as the uniform comes off, you know, the mission, it doesn't. If this conversation hits something for you, I've, like I've said earlier, I've built an entire series, or I'm in the process of building a series and recording, and it's called the Retire Right program. It goes deep into your identity transition after a career in service. Everything from the emotional arc to rebuilding your purpose to what happens to your marriage or to your health in this season. It's all here on this channel. And I want you to start with the first episode, which has already been recorded, and work your way through. It was built for people who gave a lot and want to build something real on the other side. Now, go find out who you are without the uniform. And I promise you that you're going to like the answer. With that being said, we'd appreciate it if you would like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you here in the future. We out.